So, good afternoon, everyone. So, today I'm going to start the enterprise risk management, right? So, we have completed the technical issues and we have discussed about some sort of introduction to the risk management. There we have discussed the process of risk management. So, today we are directly moving on to the enterprise risk management. So, this is what we have to do when we are going to work with the company, right? So when it comes to the enterprise risk management, so what do you mean by enterprise? Anyone know? What do you mean by enterprise? Enterprise? Yes. What do you mean by enterprise? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Any other idea? Why we don't call it as business risk management? Right. What is the difference between enterprise and business? I would say like this. The business is a part of enterprise. Then we can say enterprise. But when it comes to enterprise, rather than the business, it is the definition is much more broader, right? So let's say if I'm going to do some project, I'm going to build a road. That is also my enterprise, right? If I'm going to do something kind of a business, right? That will be become my enterprise, right? Therefore, business is enterprise. When it comes to enterprise, it is kind of broader concept is there. That is why we are using the enterprise risk management. How we are going to manage the risk in the enterprise, right? So that is what we are going to learn today, right? So first of all, as I mentioned before, you need to know the meaning of the enterprise. So this is the meaning of the definition of the enterprise, and enterprise is a general term of for the project or undertaking, but is most likely used for the business such as a company, right? Hence, there are upside risks in which a business can do better than expected, and downside risks in which some goes badly for the business. So, at the first day, we have learned what is the meaning of the risk, right? So now it says something different idea there, right? Upside risk and downside risk, right? Right. So we have learned if something happen in the future, which we actually not expected, so we call it that risk. Right. So when it comes to enterprise risk management, we are looking at the upside risk as well as downside risk. So we will discuss this upside risk and downside risk at the latter part of the discussion. So I'm keep it side. So mainly when it comes to the risk, sometimes risk may be favorable for us. Sometimes risk may be unfavorable for us. Right. So we call it as upside risk. It is favorable for us. Right. Downside risk is unfavorable for us. Right. When you are doing the business, sometimes some are risky. Our business එක කරගෙන යද්දී අපිට වාසි සාගතයි. Right. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් අපි අපිට control එක නැති environment එක නැත්නම් අපි external environment එක දිහා බලුවොත් interest rate එක එකපාරට fluctuate වෙනවා. අපි ඉතින්කෝ කරන්නේ අපි ඉතින්කෝ ආනයන අපනයන business එක import export business එක so export import කරද්දී අපිට exchange rate fluctuation එක අපිට වාසි වෙන විදිහට එනවා කිව්වොත් අවශ්‍ය වෙන විදිහට තමයි. Right. So when this get favorable impact, then we call it as upside risk. And it is when it comes to the bad side, we call it as downside. Right. So when it comes to enterprise, we are looking at the both of the risk because we are as an enterprise, we are what we are doing. We are taking the risk. Right. We are taking the risk. Right. Because if you want to earn more profit, as we learned previously, we need to take the risk. So the next question is, what is enterprise risk management? Enterprise risk management. ඊළඟ ප්‍රශ්න තමයි මොකක්ද මේ enterprise risk management is here. So what do you mean by enterprise risk management? There is a definition. You got the definition, but you have to know the real meaning. You don't want to know the meaning by heart. Right? What's the general meaning of enterprise risk management? Yes? Any ideas? Any simple idea? And express the meaning of enterprise risk management? What do you mean by enterprise risk management? What do you mean by it? Kalau kita bagi kalau dia sama dia bukan. So, what enterprise risk management is? Yes. Yes. What do you mean by enterprise risk management? So when it comes to the enterprise risk management, right? Enterprise risk management needs to be an integral part of the business operation. So that means when it comes to business, we are having a financial operations, we are having a kind of a general operations, as well as we are having a kind of a strategical thing, right? When you are coming to the business, so there are three levels. When you are taking the decisions, strategical decisions, tactical decisions, and operational decisions. And all of these decisions needs to be included the risk management part. So that is why we call it as it is enterprise risk management. That is, the whole enterprise needs to have the risk management in them, the strategic decision making, the tactical decision making, the operational decision making. Everywhere you need to have the risk management. That is why we call it as enterprise risk management, and it is a kind of an integral part of the normal business. It's an integral part of the normal business. That means without enterprise risk management, right, companies can't survive. Right? In this model. So, Kalika Colombo risk management they can then, because there are changing some sort of there are some variables that impact to the businesses, right? So therefore, business world is rapidly changing. So therefore, we can't survive without the risk management. If you don't have a risk management, you can't survive with it. So therefore, every business, right? Every business, they need to have the enterprise risk management as an integral part of their normal business work. Right? When they are taking decisions, risk management definitely needs to be there. Risk management definitely needs to be there. Right? So that is why it says the holistic alignment and integration of risk management into the development and implementation of organization strategy. So that it is embedded throughout the organization culture and therefore become an integral part of organization activity, strategy, tactical, and operational. That means business again, හැමදැනම risk management එක තියෙනවා. මම මොකද්ද කරන්නේ business එකේ? ඒකේ හැම part එකකම risk management කියන එක embedded තියෙනවා. අන්න ඒක විතර මම manufacturing business එකක් කරනවා. Right? Manufacturing business එකේ මම මොනවද කරන්නේ? Production කරනවා. Right? Raw material purchase කරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ store කරනවා. ඒ හැමදැනම we need to have the risk management. Right? We need to have the risk management. Right. So when it comes to the ERM, that means enterprise risk management, right? So these are some benefits, right? We are having, right? අපි සාමාන්‍ය ජීවිතේ risk එක manage කරාම අපිට වාසිය එනවා, right? ඒ දේවල්ම තමයි company එකට සම්බන්ධ. ඒවා policy review එක බලනකොට ඒ දේවල්ම තමයි business එකට සම්බන්ධ. දැන් මම manage කරලා තියෙනවා උදාහරණයක් විදිහට මගේ vehicle එක මම insurance කරනවා. අපොත් දෙනවා. ප්‍රබාරම කුළු වෙන අපොත් දෙනවා වාහනය කමිට සම්බන්ධ. right? කියන්නේ වාහනය කමිට නබනවා ගමගේ. without any restriction. Right? So I have managed my risk. Likewise, companies need to manage their risk. Otherwise, what will happen? For example, let's say Titanic company never in a company. Titanic never given up them company viewer. So they have managed the risk by insurance. The ship for the business, right? So What are the benefits? Promotes greater awareness of the scale and diversity of risk faced in the organization, right? So everyone have an awareness about the risk, what they are having in the business, right? Significant improvement in risk identification and subsequent proactive risk management, right? If you are having a good risk management process in your company, it is very easy to identify the risk, right? පළවෙනි දවසේ කිව්වා අපි risk එකක් identify කරගන්න නැති එකම risk එක. company එකට තියෙන risk එකක් අපි identify කරගත්තේ නැත්නම් ඒක ඊට වඩා risk එකක්. ඒ මම දන්නේ නැත්නම් මට risk එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා. right. මට කොච්චර enterprise risk management තිබ්බද දන්නේ. So therefore it is very easy to identify the risk if you are having a good enterprise risk management in your business. Right. Ensure that the directors, managers, and employees are all aware of their risk responsibilities. Right. In the each level of the business, everyone knows what is the risk I'm responsible for. Right. මට මොන වගේ risk එකක් තියෙන මම කොහොමද ඒක manage කරන්නේ, everyone knows. Aware. Because in the enterprise risk management, we have document all the risks. Each and every level. I will show you, right, how they are presented in the risk management policy. Right. Improves the quality and robust of decision due to comprehensive risk assessment. Right. So when you are taking a decision, so I'm going to acquire a business. Right. I'm going to acquire business. The first thing what we need to do, we need to assess the risk. We need to identify the risk. What kind of risk I'm having? Then I'm going to purchase or acquire the business. Right. Then I need to assess it, whether it is a high risk, medium risk, or low risk. Right. Then only I'm taking the decision. Right. If you're not having a good enterprise risk management system, then you will take wrong decision because you are actually not assessing your risk correctly. Right. Provide reasonable assurance for the broader range of stakeholders, especially shareholders. So when it comes to the business, what is the main objective of business? What is the main objective of business? Profitability. No.
Maximizing shareholder.
Yes, very correct. Maximizing the shareholders' wealth, right? So we have to address the shareholders' concern, right? So that means we need to show you are gaining appropriate wealth, right? So therefore we need to protect it. So therefore we need to assess the risk, right? Improve legal, regulatory, and reporting requirements, right? So when it comes to the let's say when it comes to the financial reporting, so we need to assess the fraud risk, right? When it's coming to the audit risk, when you are coming to audit risk, so we need to assess the risk. What kind of a risk you are having? So what do you mean by the audit risk? Anyone knows? Audit risk. Audit risk. Why? Giving a wrong opinion.
Material mistake.
Kind of partially correct, but not the complete idea. Giving a wrong opinion is partially correct.
Material mistake.
Material misstatement. What is the audit risk? Mama, kita nama meya gana. Berarti mati aja. Mati nama meya hoda aja. Berarti lama. Berarti lama itu lagi. ඒ වුණාට මෙයා හොඳයි. අපි වලමු ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ස්ටේට්මන්ට් ගත්තා. ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ස්ටේට්මන්ට් එකේ වැරදි දේවල් තියෙද්දි මම කියනවා ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ස්ටේට්මන්ට් හොඳයි. There are some misstatements in the financial statement, but we are expressing an correct opinion, right? Or not qualified opinion. Right? So that is the audit risk, right? Audit risk, and also we can identify the fraud risk, right? It's very important to identify fraud risk, right? Nowadays, the fraud is happening in the business, so you have to identify the fraud risk. So that is why in the planning part, in the audit, you all are doing the risk assessment. We are looking at the fraud risk. When you are doing some audit, you know, right? So these are some sort of benefits of enterprise risk management. So just you need to remember and you need to elaborate those things when it comes to the examination, right? Right. With the some sort of practical example. I'm expecting the practical examples, right? Right. But I want to elaborate this with the practical example, right? Right. The next question is, who is responsible, right? I'm asking you to create a ERM, right? Enterprise Risk Management System in your organization, right? Who is the responsible party for this? Who is the main responsible party? The board of directors, right? So the board of directors is responsible for establishing a comprehensive risk management governance structure, including the risk management committees. So you have, I think you have learned the governance, right? Governance. So there, it explain about the audit committee, remuneration committee, right? Related party committee, right? So those kind of committees are there, right? To address the risk. So the risk, the main responsibility towards the risk when it comes to the organization is with the board of directors. So therefore, they are the main responsible party to create the comprehensive risk management system in the business, right? So they are the main responsible party. Then we can have a chief risk officer, right? Nowadays, in most companies, this is actually the kind of a theoretical term, chief risk officer. But when it comes to the current business, most probably we are having a risk security officer, like us, right? Mostly he's looking at the IT concepts and all operations. He's embedded with all the knowledge, right? A chief risk officer, right? He is actually supporting to the board of directors because he is having the specialized knowledge, right? The board of directors got a comprehensive risk management policy ka khadana kiwata. They don't knowledge එක නැති ඉන්නවා. So that's is done by the chief risk officer, and he is actually doing the operation thing as well, right? So then the audit committee, right? What audit committee is doing? Audit committee is oversighting and overlooking that whether this risk management system is actually happening, right? Whether it is effective to address the risk in the company, right? So therefore, these three parties mainly responsible for enterprise risk management in the business. But you know, every one of the company in the company, you need to know what kind of risk we are having, right? What kind of risk we are having at the each level. So that is why the benefit part we have discussed in each level, managerial level, employee, just kind of a lower level of the employment. For everyone needs to know the risk responsibilities, what they are having, right? So therefore, we can't say only board of directors are responsible for the risk. Everyone in the business is responsible for the risk, but creating the risk management policy or enterprise risk management policy is with the responsibility with the board of directors, right? Right. Any questions after all? Yes. Any questions? I know you don't have questions. Right. So then, next thing is how we are going to create the ERA, right? Right. Yeah, we don't give the enterprise risk management other than that. Right. So there are acceptable ways you can do the enterprise risk management. Right. So there are two ways generally. Right. So one is you all know the COSO framework. I think you know, right? And also ISO 31000 2018 risk management, right? So I'm not focusing on the ISO guidelines, right? It's not actually very important to you guys because you need to show the results and you need to get the certification. That is what ISO is doing, right? So you have to submit some documents and you need to get the approval or you need to get the certification, right? But when it comes to COSO framework, you can apply the COSO framework to your organization, right? So we will discuss the COSO framework in 2 times in this part as well as when it comes to the internal control part. Because in the risk management, internal control is somewhat very important to discuss. Right? We will discuss in the next 2 weeks, right? So here I will take the COSO framework to ask how you need to create the enterprise risk management, right? So when it comes to COSO framework, in this this thing, they have come up with a different perspective rather than the internal control. That is why I'm mentioning that I'm using this COSO framework in two different types. Right? In the internal control, we will discuss in a kind of a different perspective. But when it comes to the enterprise risk management, I'm talking this in a different perspective. So don't take it as a similar thing, right? ඒ දෙකම සමානයි කියලා හිතන්න එපා perspective එක වෙනස්. right? ඒ නිසා අපි discuss කරන දේවල් දෙවිදිහට. right? internal control එකට අපි කතා කරන COSO framework එක එකක්. හැබැයි එකම තමයි. එකම concept එක අරගෙන මේ perspective වෙනස්. enterprise risk management එකට අපි කතා කරන COSO framework එකමයි perspective වෙනස්. ඒ නිසා ඒක පටල ගන්නකොට exam එකේදී question එක දුන්නාට පස්සේ identify කරන්න මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ අහලා තියෙන්නේ internal controls වලින්ද enterprise risk management වලින්ද. internal control වලින් අහලා තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ enterprise risk management එකේ තියෙන COSO framework එක ලියන්න එපා. පළවෙනි එක කිව්වා. ඒක කරන නිසා කියන්නේ. මේක perspectives දෙකක් තියෙනවා. right? So internal control system when it comes to internal, I just elaborate the difference. right? When it comes to the internal control system, we will discuss about the 5 components of the COSO framework with the 17 principles. Right? Right? Generally, they are in the control environment. Right? Risk assessment. Right? Right? Control activities, reporting, and monitoring activities in the internal control part. Right? But when it comes to the enterprise risk management, we are following the same concept in a different way. Right? I will show you. Right? So I'm just discussing about this one, the COSO framework. Right? COSO framework, and I'm not actually discussing the ISO 31,000, right? Because when you are going to get some sort of a certification, you need to submit a document and you need to get the document. You need to get the certification, right? So there are some guidelines when it comes to ISO. So it's not very important to you all. So therefore, I'm moving to the COSO framework, right? COSO ERM framework, right? COSO ERM framework, right? So this is a framework for ERM only, right? Right? කියන්නේ මේක පටල ගන්න නිසා, right? Internal control එකේ යද්දි වෙන framework එකක් COSO framework එක තමයි මේ perspective වෙන, right? Right. So when it comes to business, normally what we are having in every business, we are having a mission, right? We are having vision, and also we are having objectives and core values, right? අපි මොකක් හරි business එක පටන් ගන්නතර පස්සේ අපි තියෙනවා vision එකක්, right? vision එකක්. ඊළඟට අපිට තියෙනවා strategy, right? When it comes to business, we are having strategy. What kind of strategy I am having? What kind of pricing strategy I am having, right? What kind of a marketing strategies I am having? So I'm developing my strategy. Right. So then, business objective formulation, right? To achieve each and every business objective, that means I want to make this company profitable in next year. That is my business objective. So to do that, I need to formulate the business objective. I need to do something, right? Then I have to implement the formulation which I have formulated. I want to implement. I want to perform it. Right? Then I want to monitor whether I am achieving that profitability or not. So that is the common type of business. I mean, I am not discussing about the retail business. I'm not discussing the Sillera Kada, right? I'm discussing about the big enterprise. That means big business, right? So normally, but we are starting with business. That means a kind of a big one. Then first of all, we need to have a mission. What we are going to do in the future. What we are going to achieve in the future, right? Then we need to have the strategy, right? Then we need to have the objective formulation, and we are going to implement it, and we are going to monitor it, right? And finally, what our final objective? We need to enhance the value, right? So we are going to enhance the value of the shareholders, right? Enhance the value of the shareholders. Why everything we are doing? We want to enhance the value of the shareholder. That means to maximize the wealth of the shareholder. Right. Right. So therefore, we need to have the COSO ERM framework. So in COSO ERM framework, there are 5 components are there. The first one is governance and culture. Right? Governance and culture. Right? In internal control COSO framework, we are calling this as control environment. Right? So that is the difference. Here, we are calling it as governance and culture. Same thing, but in a different perspective. Right? In the control environment internal audit, right, we are looking at the what we are now having, right, in the internal control system. Then අපිට මොකක්ද මේ internal control එක ඇතුළේ තියෙන්නේ? අපේ කොහොමද check එකක් authorize වෙන්නේ? සාමාන්‍යයෙන් generally කොහොමද තියෙන්නේ? When it comes to the COSO ERM framework, that means what we are going to do now, we are going to manage our, right? In internal control system, what we are going to do, we are going to implement a new internal control system. But now we are going to establish the enterprise risk management system where we can find out or we can stop the risk. So first point is governance and culture. What do you mean by governance and culture? Governance and culture. Governance and culture. Yes.
Board governance.
Yes. Corporate governance. You need to have board governance. Yes. I think you have learned about the governance, right? When it comes to governance, you need to have the board balance, right? Independent directors. You need to have non-executive directors, right? And you need to have, there are some regulations for the board diversity as well. You need to have the skillful people. You need to have the male balance, right? Right. So there are so many things you need to look at when it comes to governance, right? And culture. What do you mean by culture? Culture. Culture. Yes, organizational culture. What kind of culture?
Working environment.
Yes, kind of. Yes. So when it comes to culture, right? So if you want to manage the risk, you need to have the risk focused culture. Right? The culture එක නිසානේ මේ රටවත් මෙහෙම මිනිස්සු හැමෝම හොරු කියන්නේ culture. Right? 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 So we need to develop the culture, governance and culture. The first thing we need to do is we need to look at the governance and culture. Right? Governance and culture. Governance sets the organization tone, reinforcing the importance of and establishing oversight responsibilities for enterprise risk management. Right? To ethical value, design behavior and understanding of risk in the entity. Right? So what kind of ethical culture you need to have, what kind of understanding you need to have in the business, or what kind of behavior you need to have to identify the risk. So that is, we call it as governance and culture. Right? That means you need to have the tone. You need to set the tone to address the risk. You need to have the tone to identify the risk. Right? So that is the governance and culture. Then second one is strategy and objective setting. Right? Strategy and objective setting. So now you are creating the environment. First of all, we need to create the environment to have the risk management concept. Right? So now you are having the environment. Then what the environment does, environment. Then you can formulate the strategy. You can set the strategy. Enterprise risk management strategy and objective setting work together in the strategic planning process. Appetite is established and aligned with strategy, business objectives, put strategy into practice while serving as a basis for identifying, assessing, and responding to risk. Right. So now you are having a good culture, you are having a good environment, you are having a good governance, so everything is set. Then you need to have the strategies, how we are going to address each and every risk, how we are going to address it. Right? If there is a kind of a revenue downfall, so how I'm going to address. So I have formulated the strategies for the future. right? So that is the second one, right? In the internal control system, what we are doing is internal control system, the COSO framework, risk identification, right? The COSO framework, right? So that means they are setting the strategies for the future risk, right? Future risk, huh? Now it's not happened, but I'm setting strategies for the future risk, right? So then the next one, after setting up the strategies, what we can do? We can perform, right? So now I am in a good environment. I have set the strategies within the environment. Then I will perform the risk management practices, right? Risk management practices. Risks that may impact the achievement of strategy and business objective need to be identified and assessed. Risks are prioritized by in the context of the risk appetite. The organization then select the risk response and take portfolio view of the amount of risk it has achieved. The results of this process are reported to key stakeholders, right? Right, key stakeholders. So you have established the risk management practices. Then now you have performed them, right? And then review and revision. Right? මගේ revenue downfall එකක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මම ඒකට response කරන්නේ මේ විදිහට. හැබැයි ඒක අපි review කරන්න ඕනේ. ඇත්තටම අපි expected විදිහට risk manage කරනවා. So therefore I have to review and response. Right? Right? So we need to review it. Right? That means generally we are monitoring it and whether there is any kind of a deficiency or any kind of not acceptable things is there, what you need to do? You need to revision. Right? You need to do the revision. Revise the established strategy. Right? Then information, communication, and reporting. Right? So the communication is very important and reporting is very, very important. Right? You have to communicate everything. You have to report everything. That means everyone in the business needs to be aware about the risk. Right? What kind of a risk we are having, how we are going to respond it, right? What kind of a differences with the expectation and the general practice, right? So those kind of things you need to communicate, right? So this is what the COSO framework is saying, right? So these are the steps. Generally, we can say these are the steps you need to follow when you are establishing an enterprise resource management system according to the COSO framework. Right? Okay. So I will show you an example how it's done. So in the performance chart, it says you need to inform the stakeholders, right? So therefore, each and every business or each and every PLC company mostly, right? So there is a risk management, enterprise risk management, disclosure is there, right? That's a kind of a non-financial disclosure, right? Every PLC company you can see the enterprise risk management. Why they are revealing it? Without the enterprise risk management, people are not going to invest in your company. Right? As a shareholder, I want to know what are the risks I am having with this business. Right? Not invest. Therefore, each and every company will reveal their enterprise risk management policy or the enterprise risk management practices and how we are going to address the risk they have mentioned. Right? So I will show you. Right, you can see. You can see enterprise risk management. So this is the enterprise risk management practice done by the JKH. Right? So they have given the overview. right? You can see. Enterprise risk management is the process of identifying, evaluating, and prioritizing risks that could affect the group and taking the mitigation action to minimize the negative impact or to risk reasonable opportunities that may arise. We at John Gibbs Holding engage in the continued risk assessment process across the group, right? So that's what I am saying, right? So you need to have the as an integral part of the business process. You need to have the risk management. Right. We at JMPL continue risk management as we understand the consequences such risk can bring for our business is not addressed properly. Right. Business එක හරියට මේ risk එක address කරේ නැත්නම් අපිට වෙන්න පුළුවන් impact එක අපි identify කරලා තියෙනවා. Right. So then they have mentioned the risk management process they have followed. We have discussed this in the first lecture. Right. Identification of risk. Right, how we are going to report, how you can assess the risk, right? Right, so you can see how they are going to assess the risk, right? And how they are going to monitor the risk, right? And how we are going to report the risk, right? So then they have mentioned the key risks, what they are having in the business to the stakeholders, right? Right. So you can see. Let's say this one, loss of business due to factories closing down. So that is a kind of a risk they are having in the business. If the factories close down, what kind of risk I'm having? All the key stakeholders in the industry work as a closed system. Therefore, any closing down of factory directly affects the supply chain of the industry and cause loss of business and financial losses to the company. Right. So they have identified the risk. Right, factories will close. Right, they have identified risk rating is medium. Right, how they are going to respond it? The company closely monitors the green leaf intake to factory and the catalog quantities. Ensure proper background check are carried out before when taking on new business. Right, how they are going to respond to that is they have identified the risk. Then they have formulated strategy. Right. Then nowadays we can generally see in the Sri Lankan context, labor wage increases, right? Day-to-day operations getting interrupted due to strikes, right? So how they are going to respond it? Discussion with manpower supplies to maintain adequate supply of manpower, continuous monitoring and payment as per industry standards, looking for backup outsourced labor providers, monitoring of statutory payment of staff, provision of safe and quality work environment. Right. දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම MAS වගේ කම්පැනි එකක් ගත්තොත් ගොඩක් වැඩ කරව ගන්නවා එම්ප්ලොයිස් එක. හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලෝ හොඳ working environment එකක් දෙන්න තියෙනවා. කන්න දෙනවා, ගෙදර ඉඳන් එක් කරගෙන යනවා. Right. Right. They are satisfying the employees. Right. But they are taking most out of the employer because from that, right? Then so this is actually we can control. This we can control within the company, right? So then when we are going to the external risk. Here, how they are going to address the natural disasters, right? Natural disasters. JK PLC has a business continuity plan in place, which is reviewed and updated quarterly. Right? We ensure that our assets are adequately covered through insurance. Right? So that is how they are going to respond to risk. And they have mentioned the fraud and corruption. Right? When it comes to fraud and corruption, it is very low. Right? You can see the rate. fraud and corruption in the J gate is very low. They are greater, right? And how they are going to address? They carefully monitor and review the fraud fields analysis in collaboration with group business process review. There is a constant management supervision and internal audits conducted to oversee and investigate any fraud to internal control system. Strict disciplinary action is taken towards any fraud identified. Here you can see responsibility of the board of directors on risk management report of the company. The responsibility of maintaining an effective system of internal control and risk management lies with the board. Right? The audit committee on behalf of the board reviewed the risk management process adapted and reported by the group prior to the discussion by the board. Right? So they have mentioned about the responsible parties to the stakeholders as well. Right? About the risk management, who are the responsible parties to the risk management program. Right? Likewise, you can have a risk management, enterprise risk management practices in your company, and you need to reveal it, right, to the stakeholders, right? So moving with that, right. So generally, companies using when you are going to address the risk, right? Company using this framework, we call it as SARA framework, right? It's a framework, right? So the first one is for T, transferring a risk to another party, right? What we are normally doing, right? Transfer or risk to another party. Acceptance or tolerance of a risk. Reduction or mitigation of risk. Avoidance or termination of risk. We have discussed this in the risk management course as well, right? So this is the SARA framework. If there is a risk identified in your business, you need to follow this framework, right? Exam case study case study you have to identify the risk and how you are going to address this. So when you are going to address this risk, you need to follow this framework. So there is a guideline to follow this framework, right? Here. This is how you are going to address the issue. The most appropriate SARA option to manage the risk is depend on two factors: the impact of the risk and probability of the risk occurring. Right? Impact of the risk, what kind of impact I am having, and probability of risk occurs. Right? Probability risk right? So you have to measure and you have to define. Right? Generally, in the case study, we will give the numbers, so then you can calculate the impact, and you can assess whether this impact is high or low or medium. Right? So when it comes to the probability, right? Because probability of happening this fraud is low, right? And also the impact is low, right? Impact because if there is some okay, we will accept it, and we will accept the risk, right? Then probability is low, but impact is very high. Probability is low, but impact is high. We are going to transfer it, right? Like we are having the vehicle insurance, right? Right. Lanka happen ගොඩක් ඉඩ වැඩි. වෙන රටක ගත්තොත් හැප්පෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? ගොඩක් කලාවට අඩුවෙන් තමයි right? Pollution rate, right? So then probability is low, impact is high, they will transfer because why we are transferring? The impact is high, right? කොයි වෙලාවෙ හරි සිද්ධ වුණොත් එහෙම impact is very high. Then Titanic never insurance කරන්න නැතුව මුහුදේ යවුවටනේ මොකද වෙන්නේ? ගිරුණාට පස්සේ හදපු කට්ටිය ඉවරයි. So therefore they are transferring the risk. Right? Probability is high, impact is low. Probability is high, impact is low. What we are doing? Impact is low, but probability is high. Right? For example, what exchange rate fluctuation. Right? Probability is high, but let's say not in Sri Lanka. When it comes to America, right? The interest, the exchange rate fluctuation is very kind of fluctuation is very low. Right? Probability is very low, but probability is very high. But when it comes to impact, it is low. Right? So then what we can do? We can reduce. Right? We can reduce. Then both the probability and both the probability and impact is high. Right? මේ මොකක් හරි වෙනවා මේ බිල්ඩින් එක එකපාරම කඩන් ගන්නවා හැම වෙලේම මේ බිල්ඩින් එක කඩන් ගන්නවා හදන්න කඩන් ගන්නවා. Right? කඩන් ගන්න කියලා නෙවෙයි කියන්නේ මේ බිල්ඩින් එක හදන මං හදනවා දැන් ආයෙ කඩන් ගන්නවා ආයෙ හදනවා කඩන් ගන්නවා. So then මම මෙතන බිල්ඩින් එක හදන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ හදන්න කඩන් ගන්නවා. Avoid. Right? So this this is how you need to apply the TARA framework when there is a case study question. Right? Definitely there will be a case study question from the TARA framework. You need to apply the TARA framework. First of all, you need to apply the risk management process. Right? You need to design the risk management process based on the POSO framework. Then TARA framework you need to apply by using the probability and impact assessment. Then enterprise risk management over time. That means now I am having an enterprise risk management system in place. So now I am comfortable enough, right? And I'm not going to review again. That is wrong. You need to look the enterprise risk management system every time. It is an ongoing process, right? Risk management process update, right? Right. So therefore, it is a ongoing process, right? Businesses face new challenges all the time. So risk management is an ongoing process. That is also mentioned in the JH report, right? Businesses are changing. ERM should be integrated into the business for faster response to unexpected risk. So if you are facing kind of unexpected risk now, so you need to have the strategy to address the risk, right? So you need to identify it before it happens. Delaying the ERM as an annual project. Some are companies ERM system make annual project එකක් මේ අවුරුද්ද කළා ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දම ආයෙ review කරනවා. That is not correct. So it is an ongoing process. Delaying ERM as an annual project is not ideal due to the needs of political decision making. Implementing ERM can be challenging if it is new to the organization. To successfully implement ERM, a risk-aware culture and proper training for the employees are crucial. Employees need motivation to implement and monitor the risk management plan. Right? So if you are going to implement a risk management practices or risk management policies among your employees, the employees need to be trained for that, and also employment need to train for it. Right? That's why when the risk management get out of us, අපහසු කැමති නැහැ. වෙනස් වීමට කැමති නැහැ මිනිස්සු. change එකට කැමති නැහැ. අපි උනත් කැමති නැහැ change එක. වෙනසට කැමති නැහැ නේද? වෙනස් කරලා දුක් විඳලා තියෙන නිසා වෙනසට කැමති නැහැ දැන් කොහොමද ලංකාවේ. right? ඒ නිසා change එකට කැමති නැහැ ගොඩක් කරා. මිනිස්සු මේ විදිහට එක. right? ඒ නිසා හැම වෙලේම අපි motivate කරන්න employees. right? motivate කරන්න ඕනේ මේ risk management policies වලට adhere වෙන්න. right? නැත්තම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට employees කැමති නැහැ. අපි කැමති නැහැ extra burden එකක් දාගන්න. මට කියනවා risk management policy එක ගන්නවා. ඔයා මේක sign කරන්න කලින් දෙන්නෙත් කියලා authorize කරගන්න. මම කැමති නැහැ. ඉස්සෙල්ලා කරේ මම විතර sign කරලා ගිහලා දෙනවා බෑ. right? But you have to train, you have to aware what you are going to do, right? From this, right? So that is how you can apply the enterprise risk management system over time, and you need to remember it is an ongoing process. That is very important. right? Because unexpectedly we will having some risk in the business. So we need to have the proper procedure to address those, right? Okay. So now this is the end of the enterprise risk management introductory part, right? So thank you for listening to the watching the film. Now you have to do your own work, right? So there's a classroom discussion question is there, right? So I think I have posted it to the LMS as well. Classroom discussion one, right? Uh, right. So I will first read the question, then you have to answer the question. Right. Nusco takes a well-established industrial bakery for nearly 50 years. Supplies cakes and confectionery items to supermarkets and restaurants nationwide, with a presence in neighboring countries as well, while prioritizing long-term shareholder wealth. The cake company also consider all the stakeholder needs in its strategic planning, recognizing the growing complexity of the existing risk and emerge of new trends. The board of directors acknowledge the need for the significant enhanced risk management program. The proposal involves appointing a risk manager who would report to the audit committee, currently comprised entirely of non-executive directors, mostly from the outside the industry. This appointment signifies a shift towards a more comprehensive and professional approach to risk management across the entire organization. So before finalizing the decision, the audit committee seeks clarification on the concept of ERM or enterprise risk management and its relevance to the state company. Right. So what they are going to do? They are going to implement the generally they are going to implement the ERM system, not ERM system to the company. So the board of directors asking you some questions regarding the implementation of ERM. Right. The first question is advise the CFO of the three benefits and three key drawbacks of introducing enterprise risk management to the current company. And the second question, considering the companies operates in the food industry, what specific type of risk might ERM help them identify and mitigate? Beyond the audit committee oversights, how can ERM be effectively integrated into company culture at the company to ensure successful implementation? Right. What is the first question? First question, what we are asking the benefits, pros and cons of the ERM. Right. Then, secondly, we are asking what kind of a risk, as this company is working on the food industry, what kind of a risk we can identify by using this ERM system and how we are going to mitigate them. Right. Then, when you are implementing the ERM, how you are integrated it to the organization culture. Right. So these three questions you have to answer now. I will give you 8 minutes. Don't write pages, just one form. Boleh ada dari cerita ya. Fakta itu. Oh, itu tahu. Jadi, risknya manajer lah. Lanka sama display kan ID baiklah. Jadi makin awak print out lagi. Foto kan. Ini dia dah lihat, dia lagi post apa exam kita नहीं कर लिया था. Dan jadi kita di mana mana kita kita देखो लिया. Yang betul. Dan jadi kita lihat balik, dua kita lihat. One exam is going to get into the The second question is now the answer. First question is benefits. I take it to benefit. Maybe that will make us do Australian. It's about overall paragraph of and that's what I got. Our name again here is the subject. Then I got that. That's how you pass for hiking the other bit. I overall then I got connected concept. So the time you to particularly that the paragraph of that. Maybe the subject and the paragraph of them paragraph planning. Exam theory practical level apply. You are going to apply in the practical scenario. What you are learning in the class. Mainly, I am focusing on the second one. You have to identify the risk. That's what I want to know. Whether you have got my points correctly. So when we are writing the drawback, the first question, what I have discussed with them. When you are writing the drawbacks, right? Normally, when it comes to ERM system, we say that implementing ERM system is good not for the business. So here, what you need to do is you need to advise the CA. So when you are advising the CFO about the disadvantage, then CFO might think it's not good to adapt to this ERM system. So therefore, what you need to do, you need to write the disadvantage. Like you can say implementation cost is very high. Right? But you need to give, but you have to do the cost benefit analysis and see whether this implementation cost we can recover in the future. Because you need to motivate the CFO to implement this ERM system. Right? So that is why you need to address the business. This is not like and relevant. Can the end of that progress advantage disadvantage can be another. You need to analyze it. Analyze the for this then serious for a decision for this thing. So these are the answers, right? So when you are writing the answer, right? මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න උත්තර ලියද්දී නිකන් අර ආමාන ඉතින් ලියන්න වගේ ER system එකක් implement කරලා කොහොමද? So you need to write a time of complex one. So you are going to advise DX, right? The first one is you can increase the awareness, right, about the risk you are having in the business, right? You can have the awareness, right, for the people about the risk you are having, right? And you can implement the strategies for the risk, right? And responsibilities, each and everyone have their clear responsibility when it comes to risk management responsibility, right? And very importantly, when it comes to business, as we discussed previously, the main objective of the business is enhancing or maximizing the wealth of the shareholders. So, implementing a ERM system, one benefit is you can enhance the confidence of the shareholder, right? You can enhance the confidence of the shareholder, right? So then, called potential knowledge gap. You are having a knowledge gap sometimes because you are going to implement a new thing, right? Sometimes your people in the business don't know how to implement, how to do the ERM system. So there's a knowledge, right? So that is a kind of a disadvantage. But you need to write, when you are writing the disadvantage, you can suggest the CFO how you can mitigate this disadvantage. Because implementing ERM system is a good thing, right? So therefore, you can't write the disadvantage. You can write the disadvantage and you need to write how to mitigate it. Right? How to mitigate the knowledge. Right? You can educate the people. You can educate the course of. You can educate the ERM system about the ERM system. You can educate your people. Likewise, you can have some sort of strategies to mitigate the knowledge gap and also the implementation cost. Right? As I mentioned before, implementation cost. You can have some sort of cost benefit analysis and see whether how we are going to recover the cost. We have incurred for the implementation. And the change resistance, very important. I have discussed that as well. Resistance, right? People are not like to change, right? So when I'm going to implement the ERM system, so people say, no, we can't adapt to it. What we can do, we can motivate it, right? We can facilitate it, right? That is how you write the answer. I don't want the specific benefits and disadvantages. You need to critically evaluate because you are going to advise to CA, right? Not like in first year. So you need to advise to the CFO. You are the one who is advising the CFO. CFO is one who is taking the decision. So you are advising to take the decision. Then the second question, the risk, right? So what are the risks you are having? The business, food industry, competition. Product very important when it comes to the food product quality is very important. Yes. Competition. Yes. Supply chain, yes. Supply chain. You need to have a good supply chain. Yes. Yes. More specific to food industry, regulatory. Yes. Regulation. Food regulations are there. Right? Very important. Right. Food regulations are there. Any other? Yes. Yes. Yes.
Risk of losing loyal customers.
Risk of losing our customers.
The product quality is not up to the standard.
Basically, the product quality is. That is it. When you are writing the risk should be a broader, right? Risk is broader with risk. Right? It was specified. Any other risk? Why? Right? So we can have the food safety, supply chain instructions, quality control, consumer preferences, brand reputation, like right? You can write the risk, right? Right. When you are writing the risk, you need to write some sort of paragraph to prove that it is the risk for this food company. In this case, yeah, actually I know provide some sort of numbers and all, right? So then you can extract the number, extract the figures, extract the information in the case study, then you can elaborate the risk, right? And question number 3, when you are going to implement the ERM system to the company, what kind of a cultural differences you can have and how you are going to address it? How we are going to address it? ERM system company implement කරන්න what are the strategies I can follow? ERM system company. Definitely you need to train. Right. Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Raising the awareness of risk management.
Awareness. Very good. You can provide incentive that is really motivated. Incentive. Yes. Continuous improvement. Okay. So here, what we are going to do is we are going to implement a new PRM system. So therefore, what kind of things we need to do? Moving a business PRM system है दान है. तो बहुत सारे भी PRM system है कम से कम organization और आगे चलकर दान है. Continuous improvement we can do after. Employment training. Yes. Communication, as he mentioned, awareness. You can have the communication, and you can aware the what we are going to do, right? What kind of things we are having in the system, and we can have the incentive schemes, right? So if you are going to implement a thing, then definitely people have some sort of resistance there. So you can have some incentives and motivate them, right? And leadership commitment, very important, right? Even though we are having a ERM system in the company, right? Leadership is not actually committed to it. Then there's no point of having a ERM system in the company. Like in Srilanka context, right? You can see you do have the ERM system, and on the after the tender procedure, we have the financial regulation too. Very big book, financial regulations are there. You need to follow the tender procedure, but every time when you are making a road, the next day you can see there are some faults in the road, right? So they are not following the tender procedure. They are not taking the tender because the leadership is not committed to the yard. Leadership is not following the yard. They are not committed to it. What's the ERM system company implement that leadership to take a commitment? Because they are having the power. They have the position power. They can overcome or they can mitigate those activities we are having, and they can do some mistakes. Right. Leadership coming. Right. Then very important thing, right? So now we are going to implement the ERM system. So you need to integrate the ERM system within the business process. Let's say I'm doing the manufacturing business. So when it comes to manufacturing business, as I mentioned before, we are doing the purchase, we are doing the selling, right? We are store some goods, we are purchasing the material, we are purchasing raw material, we are distributing the finished goods, right? When it comes to the business like that, we are having different processes, right? So therefore, when you are going to implement the ERM system within the business, you need to integrate your ERM system within this process, right? Within this process. So those kind of things we can do when we are going to newly integrate, newly implement the ERM system in the business. Right? Any concern? Any questions? Any questions regarding the ERM? Any questions? Okay, pero organization. Organization baru bagan pun tidak. Organization. Organization itu kenal orang kita. Orang lain. Apa ada visible kartu? Visible kartu. Actually, if you look at the table, asking to check the attendance. Next time, don't do I can solve some. I can have found some invisible people are there, right? UFO, right? That's right. Okay. So do you want any break? No? You can continue, right? You can stop at 350. Okay, let's have a 7 minutes break. Right, I will start the next part. Now 2:31, right? 2:40.
Ada India ada India. Ini apa? Ini kenapa nggak sih dap? Ini yang ini. Boleh nggak? Badan tahu kan? Ya waktu kan nggak ada mikir lagi.
The next part, I'm going to discuss today type of risk, right? So what type of risk we are having? So I'm discussing the perspective of enterprise, right? අපි risk එක ගත්තොත් එහෙම මෙතන බිල් ගන්න පුළුවන් එකක් risk කරන්න. ඉස්සර වැඩ පුළුවන් එකක් risk කරන්න. The perspective of enterprise. Now I'm in the business world, right? Business environment. So what kind of a risk we are generally having? Type of risk we can categorize in a different aspects when it comes to risk, right? So there are kind of three different categories: upside risk, downside risk, internal risk, external risk, and also the strategic and operational risk, right? So normally, most of the time, we are actually focused on the strategic and operational risk when we are discussing about the risk management procedure, right? But you need to know the upside and downside risk as well as the external and internal risk. So when it comes to external and internal risk, we have discussed this in I think A level as well. If you are doing the accounting or the commerce stream, right? In the PESTEL, so we will discuss the external and internal. In the PESTEL, we are discussing the external and the internal aspect. We will discuss with some sort of soft analysis, right? So that the same thing, but in a different perspective, right? So first of all, we can have the three different ways we can analyze the risk because it is very important to analyze the risk. So we need to know the opportunities and the threats of the risk, that we call it as the downside and upside of risk, right? So as I mentioned before, when it comes to risk, right? When it comes to risk, sometimes risk will create the opportunity, right? Sometimes risk will create the risk, right? සමහර වෙලාවට risk එක මට opportunity එකක් create කරනවා. සමහර වෙලාවට risk එක මට risk එකක් create කරනවා. Right? So that we call it as upside and downside of risk. Right? And internal and external risk, the risk arise within the company or within the organization, and risk arise outside the company. Next one is strategic risk and operational risk. So when it comes to strategic risk is actually overall risk we are having in the business. Overall risk, right? Within the business. And operational risk, when you are doing, let's say, purchasing, when you are doing the selling, each and every process, we are having an operational risk, right? Right. Likewise, we can have a different type of risk, right? Then downside of risk, right? Downside of risk is what? Downside of risk, right? But when you are having the risk, what kind of unfavorable things happen to us, right? So when it comes to business, we are having some problem at the company factory, loss of major customers, right? It is a kind of big risk to us. Staff problems, competitors will arriving, right? So this is, we call it as downside of risk, right? So by having risk, we are having some threats, right? To continue our business, right? So when it comes to the downside risk, right? Sometimes when you are predicting those kind of a downside risk, it is very easy to do, right? Because in the operational level, we can predict, right? The downside, right? Very easy to do, and companies are more focused on the downside risk. They are looking at the downside risk. They are spending more time on the downside risk rather than the upside risk, and because අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවනේ අපි ඒක දිහා බලන්න. අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා අපිට ළඟ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙන ඉඳලා අපි ඒක දිහා බලන්න වැඩිපුර. So downside risk, companies will spend more time on downside risk, right? They are more focused on the downside risk because it will create the threats to it, right? So when it comes to the upside risk, right? When it comes to business, right? When it comes to upside risk, right? Upside risk creates you the opportunities, right? You are having a risk and it creates you the opportunity. What is the example? Any examples you are having? Now I am having a risk, but it will create an opportunity to me, right? Any example? Think I'm having a risk, then what can I do? Just let's say I'm having a competition, right? I'm having a competitive risk, right? Competitive risk. So what can I do? Right? What can I do?
Diversification.
Yes, very good. Diversification. We can look at the new things, right? We can go for the new industry because of the competition. It will create the opportunity to me, right? Very good. Right? Any other thing? And also, if you are having an upside risk, right, you can reduce the downside risk, right? If you are having the upside risk, you can reduce the downside risk. Downside risk means the threat, right? So, what are the examples? Think. The now new competitor is coming up, right? New competitor is coming up. For the KFC, CFC is coming up. Right? Now there's a threat to the KFC. Right? So what we can do? We can add new features to the product. We can rethink about the product, right? Right? it will create the opportunity to me, right? So now you can see the KFC implement the Kottu, right? Cheese Kottu, right? That is also reason for that, right? They have identified the upside risk. Through that, they have minimized the downside risk, right? Downside, right? So that is the upside and downside risk. So when it comes to the businesses, you need to know in every business you are having a downside risk and also you are having the upside risk, right? So example for upside risk, unexpected increase in demand, right? Cost reduction opportunities, favorable market fluctuations, right? Then restructuring, increased efficiency, right? So market fluctuation is a risk, right? Market fluctuation is a risk, no? MLM market fluctuation when I risk, but it will create the opportunity. We call it as upside risk, right? Right. So when you come to this one, you can see risk is a probability that the outcome of event is unexpected, as we have learned in the first week, right? So downside risk, consider only the possibilities of adverse outcome. The downside risk, what we are considering, only the adverse outcome, right? Factory के business से continue कराएंगे, right? Adverse effect, that is a risk. Risk of closing the factory, right? Then upside risk, consider the possible favorable outcome, right? Possible favorable outcome. So here we are looking at the adverse outcome, right? I'm having the risk. I'm having the risk of exchange rate fluctuation. I'm having the risk of exchange rate fluctuation. So I'm looking at the favorable outcome to me. So I'm having the competitive risk, competition risk I'm having. So then I'm looking at the favorable outcome. Right? Likewise, he said diversification. I'm having the competition, then I will looking at the new strategy, diversification. I'm opening up a new opportunity. So that we call it as upside risk. Right? So then both risk elements should be considered. When you are going to do the analysis of the risk, both risk you need to consider. Normally, most of the business, what they are doing is they are only looking at the downside risk. Right? අපි නිකන් බලන්න downside risk දිහා විතර මට තියෙන factory එක close වෙන risk එක අය තමයි. In the exchange rate fluctuation risk එක. Right? ඒක නිසා open up වෙන opportunity එක දිහා අපි බලන්නේ නැහැ. Right? මට competitor කෙනෙක් තමයි downside risk එක. Right? ඒ නිසා මගේ business එක වැටෙන එක තමයි මගේ adverse outcome එක. Right? So that is my adverse outcome. But I'm not looking at the favorable outcome, right? So because I'm in the competition, I'm looking at the diversification, right? So therefore, when it comes to business, both risk elements should be considered. This can be referred to as two-way of speculative risk. So you can look at future and you can look at both the risk and you need to work on both the risk, right? Mostly companies are looking at the downside risk only, right? Mostly. Like normally what we are doing is we are only looking at the downside risk. අපි හැම දෙයකම අරගෙන හැම දෙයකම හොඳ නැති පැත්ත නේද? හැම දෙයකම දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. Point එකේ දෙපැත්ත තියෙනවා වගේ හැම දෙයකම දෙපැත්තක් තියෙනවා. So when it comes to risk, also there's a good thing as well as there's a bad thing. It will create a threat to you and also it will open up an opportunity to you. Risk එක ආපුණට තමයි opportunity එකක් create වෙන්නේ. Right? Opportunity are created. Risk are opportunity are created. Before moving to the classroom discussion, I will finish this as well. Internal and external risk. Right? So normally we know internal risk. What do you mean by the internal risk and the external risk? So normally internal risk is the risk arise within the company, within the organization. Right? So when it comes to when we are going to address those kind of risks, so first of all, we need to identify what kind of internal risk we are having. So therefore, we need to identify the type of business the risk is working on. One type of business එකක් work කරන්නේ. Right? උදාහරණයක් විදිහට මම financial sector එකේ business එකක් කරනවා. ඒතකොට මට ලංකාව ඇතුළේ දැන් risk එක වැඩි. මොන වගේ business එකක්ද කරන්නේ? ඒ අනුව business type එක අනුව. Right? According to my business type, what kind of risk I am having as internal risk. Where the business is in the supply chain. It is involved in the production of raw material, manufacturing, final product, retailing those products. Right? මොන වගේ supply chain එක work කරන business එකක්ද? මොන වගේ supply chain එක work කරන business. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට when the COVID-19 is coming up, right? Most of the manufacturing companies have to close their business. Why? They are doing the production. So they can't do the production with the COVID-19. Right? Right? When you are looking at the more manufacturing companies like Unilever, right? When it comes to cement companies, they have to close the business for a certain time. So you need to look at the business, how the business supply chain is behaving, right? Then size of the business, right? Size of the business, right? So when it comes to the JKH company, right? JKH group, right? That I'm referring to in last discussion, right? When it's coming to JKH group, you know, in the JKH group, you are having the John Kill sourcing, they are in the Colombo, and also they are having the Cinnamon Lakeside or the Cinnamon Hotels chain they are having, right? And also they are having the Browns companies, then, right? So likewise, it is a kind of a big company, and when it comes to the risk, they can actually manage the risk because they have already diversified their business, right? Right. So when it comes to the, let's say, Promoco Bank, anyone heard about Promoco Bank? No one? Promoco Bank? No one. So there is a bank called Promoco Bank in, I think, recently, right? 2010 or somewhere, right? Actually, it's closed, right? Because of the financial fraud. So they can actually, they can survive if the risk is coming up because the size of the company is very small, right? So therefore, when you are looking at the internal risk, when you are analyzing the risk, so you need to look at what type of business I'm working on and what kind of supply chain I'm having, and also what is the size of my business. So based on that, your internal risk, right? Your internal risk size or the impact will be large or small, depending on those things, right? So therefore, when you are analyzing the internal risk, so you know the internal risk. If the factory is closed down, then employees are actually not working properly, not working effectively. Then your production, the supply chain disruptions, likewise, your internal risks are coming up. So when you are addressing the context of the risk, so you need to look at those three things, right? You need to look at those things, right? Then you can see the risk: purchasing, the human resource, operational management, after sales service, marketing, distribution of products. So those kind of when you are performing the internal procedures, right, you will be facing the risk, right? You will be facing the risk. For the purchasing, in the COVID-19 period, for example, in the let's say we can take a cement company, right? If you see the Ultratech cement, they are in the Calania Torna Junction. There are some 2 silos are there. They are storing the cement there, right? They go to silos, so you can see in the cement store. So what they are doing is they are not producing the cements in Sri Lanka. What they are doing, they are importing cements from India, right? So first they have to face the internal risk that they can't get the cement from the India because of the COVID-19. And next, because of the dollar issue, they can't get the cement from India, right? Likewise, there are some internal risk may be arise, right? Due to the context of the business, sometimes you need to identify different risks. Human resources, people are not working effectively, right? Operational, the supply chain disruptions will may happen. distribution of product, like I said, when it's come to the Ultratech India, they can't transport the cement to the Srilanka. Marketing, when it comes to the marketing, right? You can see the marketing issues are there, marketing risks are there, right? After sales services, right? After sales services also you will be at a risk. So when it comes to the internal risk, mostly is related to the internal or the things happen within the organization that we all know. But you need to look at in a different perspective. So when you are going to give the answers for these questions, you can understand, right? So I'm not taking much time and asking you to write the answers. Right? So this is class 2 discussion number 2, right? It is relating to the upside and downside risk, right? I will read the question. ERJ is a Singapore-based company that provides an online course that allows its learners to achieve qualification in a core range of healthcare-based qualification, right? So it's a kind of a online platform, like we are having in a kind of online platforms we are having when you are doing the CS exams, right? Several senior staff members have expressed concern that the organization is standing in a growing market. These concerns are summarized below. The technology director, she said, our online learning platform is second to none. We work in a hugely competitive market, but we have a niche here, and I don't think we are exploiting it enough. We have a competitive advantage. Now we need to use it, right? We have a competitive advantage, and you have to use it, right? Then the sales director, the chief executive comes from a healthcare background. It's what he knows. So we continue to focus our sales strategy on this market. Here's the thing: the online platform is great. It's the best I have seen, and it could be easier adapted for so many other qualifications: procurement, HR, management, business, administration, finance. The list is endless. 3 months ago, I actually put forward a proposal to the board to offer a human resource qualification. It is a fast-growing market, but my proposal was rejected because the risk was considered too high, even though the potential return was great. Despite having a fantastic online platform, we are missing opportunities here, and that will not end well for ERG. And learning content director. Last year, we were approached by a professional awarding body for an entry-level management qualification, MCA. They were looking for an online provider to work with and recommend as an alternative to a traditional textbook learning material currently used. After seeing our platforms, they were so impressed that they contacted us directly. There were quite a few meetings between the senior management team here, but they decided against it. There was too much downside risk. There is far too much focus on the negative here. What about the possibilities of a favorable outcome? Surely that should be considered. And chief executive officer, so he is having some sort of a strategical view, right? He said, our main goal is to be a market leader in online course with an objective of ERJ to maintain a 30% market share in the course we offer for each qualification. We have put a huge financial investment into the online platform, and that has revised excellent feedback from our customers. Yes, we are having declining some opportunities to diversify our course offering over the last 12 months, but the possibility of adverse outcome was just too high. Our risk management model has worked well for us in the past, so why change it now, right? So now you can understand what are the views of the mostly the big personals in this company. So what you have to do is you have to identify those that are likely to either increase the possibility of either downside risk or upside risk. What kind of possibilities you are having, right? What kind of possibilities you are having, which are like to either that are likely to either increase the possibility of either downside risk No upside risk. That means generally they are asking to identify the upside risk and downside risk of this case study. Right. So what are the upside risks? I think you have already. I think you have already read this document. Right? I assume. What are the upside risks and the downside risks? What do you mean by upside risk?
Favorable.
Yes, kind of favorable. That means it will create the opportunity to you, right? Yes, one opportunity you can pick. Yes, anyone? Yes, qualification. Yes, correct. Correct, a new qualification. Yes. Yes. Any downside risk? That means normally risk, a threat to the company. Threat to the company. Competition, yes. If you are elaborating it, competition, how? Yes, very good. Other learning platforms, because this is actually emerging, right? Other learning platforms is coming up. Yes, competition. Yes. So they have provided some guidelines how you can mitigate the competition, right? So they have mentioned that they can apply, they can add some other qualifications by diversification, likewise. So let's look at the downside risk and the upside risk. Downside risk factors, that means the threats to us, right? So now we are going to implement an online platform. That means we are moving from paper-based to the online, right? So therefore, we need to have some sort of knowledge, technical knowledge we need to have. So therefore, technical knowledge gap is there, right? Right, technical knowledge gap is there. Learners resistance, very important that you need to mention, right? Threat, main threat is what? මිනිස්සු කැමති නැහැ online ඉගෙන ගන්න. Right? Learners resistance. People are not like to learn online. Nowadays, okay now, then පොඩ්ඩක් එක okay වෙලා තියෙන්නේ මොකද හැමෝම online එකට අර adapt වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. මොකද online ඉන්න ගමන් ගෙදර මොන වැඩක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Normally I think in developed countries nowadays, actually the online platform is coming for the as a solution for the COVID-19. With the COVID-19, it is actually, we don't know about Zoom until the COVID-19 comes, right? Actually, we are working on the MS Teams and all, right? But nowadays, you can see mostly people are not like to go for the online platform because they are resisting that, right? Yeah, they are saying that when we are working with the physical meetings, we can work more. Right? When you are having some sort of business meetings as well, so more people are looking at the physical meeting, right? So learner persistence is one big downside risk you are having when it comes to the online platform, right? Online platform. Then upside risk, market share advantage you are having. Right, market share advantage, being an MCA recommended provider could capture more than 30% of market, as you mentioned, right? So you are having some sort of alignment with the main qualification. Like let's say I'm going to start the online platform and I'm having accreditation from the Srilanka, right? So then definitely I can attract more people to me. Right? Increase learners appeal. Online learners might be more attractive to learners in the technological driven world. Right? Likewise, you can identify the upside risk factors as well as downside risk factors. Right? Make a lazy name. Downside risk factors, upside risk factors, identify කරන case study එකෙන් lazy නෑ. දෙක වුණා. ඒ වගේම තමයි internal environment එකේ තියෙන risk, external environment එකේ තියෙන risk identify කරන්න laziness when it's coming to the case study, right? So this is a case study. I hope you read this case study, right? So in this case study, mainly is focused on they are having some sort of concern regarding their customer, right? They are having a concern regarding their customer. They are working because the customer is actually losing their some sort of business, and that thing they have discussed, right? So then they ask you to identify the internal risk and the external risk, right? Internal risk and the external risk, and let's see how they are answered to this. Right. The question is identify the internal and external risk, right? Right. So you can see the risk, right? The first of all, they are addressing the external risk, right? So you are having the economic risk, right? Political and the environment, right? So first of all, the economic risk of change in interest rate, increasing the cost of our bank loan finance. So you need to relate this risk to the case study. Right. You can't write like this. Risk of changing interest rate. You need to relate it to the case studies. Right here, they have related to the case study. Risk of change in interest rate increase my cost, increase my business cost, right, to the bank loan, right? And risk of foreign exchange fluctuation further increase the cost of import component, right? So I'm doing an import export business. So if the fluctuation goes if the interest rate fluctuated, right, it will impact to my imports, right? Then risk of economic downturn reducing the already declined demand, right? Risk of economic already the major customers demand is declining, so now we are in the economic downturn. So it will emphasize that again my demand will goes down further. Right, because economy is downturn. මිනිස්සුන්ට සල්ලි නැහැ, economy වැටලා තියෙන්නේ. තවත් මගේ business එක downturn. Right, so that is a risk. Risk of the company's collapse, which significantly reduce our revenue and potential affects our ability to trade in the long term. Right, so that company is our main business. If that company is collapsed, at the end of the day, if that company is collapsed, right, that will hurt to my business as well. Right, because he is the main customer. Right. So according to LKS 24, sometimes if you are having a major customer, he will become your traded party. Right? Why? මම මගේ business එකේ 100% supply කරන එක පුද්ගලයෙක්ට නම් ඒ පුද්ගලයා business එක නැති වුණොත් එහෙම මමත් ඉවරයි. Right? I'm depending on that person. Right? So therefore, if the business is collapsed, right? That business is collapsed. It also reduce my revenue as well, right? My business revenue as well. So when it comes to the political context, right? Political context, risk of change in domestic import flows, right? Which result in inability to import the necessary component and manufacture our products. Risk of change in the export flow or political structure in the country from which the component is sourced, result in the inability of supply to meet our demand. Risk of change in litigation surrounding gas appliance testing resulting our non-compliance. Right, so they are doing some gas production thing, right? So it is resulting in a non-compliance thing because they are not adhere to the regulations, right? And environmental, right? Risk of flooding at the plant from the river landlord destroy the inventory and damage equipment. If there is a flood coming up, your inventory will be damaged. Risk of adverse publicity from the environmental group relating our manufacturers of fossil fuel heating system, right? Recently, you can see the Coca-Cola company. They are concerned regarding the environment aspect because they are releasing some water to the Galle River, right? Not recently, but few years back, right? So then people are refusing to take the Coca-Cola, right? So that kind of environmental risk can be arise. Risk of loss of customers change into green energy heating solution. Right. So now I am having a gas heating system, but now people are moving towards to the green energy. Right. That is also my environmental source of risk. Right. So those are the external risks. And internal risk of wastage of expensive component by untrained employees leading to additional cost. You are having untrained employees in the organization, right? It will increase the cost, right? And risk of shortage of specially trained laborers to install the component resulting in an inability to manufacturing. Risk of untrained employees damaging the new testing equipment. Risk that the system testing is carried out ineffectively by the untrained employees, right? Likewise, you need to relate to these to your case study, right? Right. We all know the internal risk, external, but you need to relate it to the case. And when it comes to the external one, risk that the new testing equipment malfunction has resulted in a defective gas heating system being solved based on the processor. Sorry, processor internal risk that the machinery breakdown, heating production, risk that the supplier cannot meet the demand for the component. අපිට risk එකක් තියෙන පුළුවන් supplier ට අපි ඉල්ලන ප්‍රමාණය දෙන්න බෑ. Right. So likewise, we will having the internal as well as the external risk. Right. So likewise, when the case study is given, you need to identify the internal and external risk as well as the outside risk and the downside risk. Right. Any questions? Any question? Right. So we will meet in 16, right? Online. I did in the schedule. 16th, we are having a online class. Yes. No. I will ask you. 16th we are having online, 20th we are having the poet day, we are also having a online class. I will ask them to change if possible. The 20th onward. Poet day to have lecture. And also we are having another lecture is 23rd. It's also online. Right? And last 3 lectures, right? Last 3 lectures I will take it as a presentation, and the last lecture, that means the final lecture, presentation plus the revision. Right? Presentation, I will finish off the presentation in that lecture, and I will do some revision what we are doing up to that point. Right? Okay, any questions other than that? So then let's stop at this point and let's meet on 16. Right? Thank you very much.